Who remembers Max Payne 3? Two things I want to say before we get into this video. If you're prone to like epileptic seizures, or if you have problems with epilepsy when it comes to like flashing lights or certain patterns, you might want to skip around certain parts of this video, or maybe just skip out on this video entirely. At the very least, I have all of my videos divided up into chapters, so you could skip to the later part of the video where we go ahead and kind of like break down the case, the manual, and kind of like take a look at some of that stuff. I at least wanted to mention that for the gameplay part of this video, because there's a lot of like different flashing lights and different like patterns that happen throughout the game. But second, happy 12th birthday to Max Payne 3. Originally, this video was going to be on the original Max Payne game, because I had actually just ordered another copy of the game to make a Who Remembers video on that. But then I remembered that the 12th birthday was coming up for the game, so I was like, hey, why don't we just go ahead and make the Who Remembers video on Max Payne 3 instead? But anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the game. I'm sure that my save game is still on here, because I'm playing this via backwards compatibility on Xbox One. And I actually just did a replay of this game last year, because I heard that there was like some FPS boosts and other boosts if you played on the Xbox One version, which is what I did. As you can see, first things first, when you get to the main menu, you have story mode, arcade mode, and multiplayer mode. Unfortunately, there's not really anybody playing the multiplayer nowadays. The arcade mode, it's just different like modes that you can do for the main campaign. You got score attack, New York minute, challenge mode, New York minute hardcore, and then you got grinds, which just kind of shows you like certain statistics and things that you've done in the story mode. But for the sake of today's video, we're just gonna go ahead, dive into the story mode. We're gonna select chapter 1, just start from the beginning. One thing that I love about Max Payne 3 is the fact that you can play this game without playing the original two games, and you won't be lost. Like, you'll still understand the story, you'll know what's happening. And the one thing that I've always loved about this game is like the style of the cutscenes, as you can see here, like all the colors that are flashing. We're not gonna focus too much on the cutscenes today, because they're a little brutal sometimes. And furthermore, I really don't want to spoil the story for anybody that hasn't like played this game by any chance. Basically, just to keep it as simple as possible, our first objective right here is to protect this girl. I'm not gonna give like a full rundown of the Max Payne story. All I'm gonna say is that if you haven't played the first two games before, I highly recommend it. I honestly believe that the Max Payne trilogy are must-play games. Even the second game, I know that's a bit more divisive because there's not as many fans of the second game. However, that being said, in my opinion, all three of these games are absolute must-play masterpieces. At the very least, the third game. If you don't have a way to play the first or second game, fair enough, but the third game, at the very least, is a must-play. This is another part that I loved about Max Payne 3. You know, obviously, this game was being developed for more, at the time, what was more advanced hardware, with that being the Xbox 360 and the PS3. There was definitely still some parts where you could tell that it was kind of pushing those consoles to the limits, especially on the PS3 version. However, it allowed them to do some really cool set pieces like this, as you guys are about to see, where he dives over the edge, goes into slow motion. And yeah, there wasn't really stuff like this in the first two games, you know, not these like cool set pieces like this. There was obviously still a lot of like intense moments, and you still had the bullet time and all that, but Max Payne 3 definitely made things a bit more cinematic. And it also helps that this game had a much bigger budget than the first two games did. And plus, this game was developed by Rockstar, so Rockstar was able to take, you know, the Max Payne IP and put their little spin on it. And I don't even think it needs to be said that, yeah, they absolutely killed it. This game is phenomenal. It took everything that we loved about the original Max Payne games, you know, the bullet time, the action, story, the world, like everything about Max Payne that we love, the gritty atmosphere. It took that foundation and put it on an even bigger scale. Because compared to the original games that just kind of like took place in New York, this game is on a much bigger scale. We travel across different countries and locations, and you know, you're never in one place for too long. Like, there's tons of different set pieces, tons of different locations in this game. One thing that I love in this game is that anytime you come across one of these shooting galleries where, you know, you're tasked with just like gunning down a bunch of guys in the room, whenever you take out the last guy, it like does this cool thing where it like shows you shooting the guy in slow motion, and it like follows the bullet and everything like that. Sometimes it does it a little differently, as you guys saw just there. Like, if you do a bit of a dive beforehand, sometimes it just kind of like pulls the camera back and shows the wide shot. But like, if you're just standing in cover and doing it normally, you know what, I'm actually gonna use a shotgun just to kind of put more emphasis on the effect. But it follows like each and every single little pebble just like this. Hold on, there we go, as you can see. And then there's also another cool thing where you can do, where if you keep pulling the trigger after it goes into that slow-mo thing and it's following the bullets, then it'll also show like the bullets that you shot after that, just like hitting the guy over and over and over and over again. It's really satisfying when you're using a shotgun, as messed up as that sounds to say. Max Payne 3 was honestly ahead of its time. Like, as you're seeing right here, this game still looks phenomenal by today's standards. Sure, it doesn't have like ray trace reflections, and sure, maybe the models aren't, you know, as crisp as like PS5 models, but like, come on, this is still an Xbox 360 PS3 game. Like, this looks so good. I'm gonna have to fix that in like post-editing or something, because I've been saying this whole time that this game is 12 years old, but no, this game came out in 2012, so it's actually been 11 years since then. I don't know how I mix that up. I guess because it's 2012 and like the time range was close enough. I honestly don't even know. Yeah, correction to what I said earlier. This game is actually 11 years old. Cutscenes in this game are so cool. Like, no matter how many times I beat the game, I mean, I'm the type of guy, I never really skip cutscenes cutscenes in games anyway, unless I'm like, I don't know, speed running it for some reason, but this is one of those games where even if I would be speedrunning it, I would never skip the cutscenes. They're so visually, like, stimulating, I guess. My favorite ones are the ones where it, like, transitions into, like, the comic book format where it, like, stays still at one frame, moves it to the side, and then pulls up the next frame. Just like that, that takes us into Chapter 2. This mission is also one of my favorites of the game. I'm a sucker when it comes to, like, nightclub areas in shooter games for some reason. Like, in Black Ops 2, that one mission where, you know, you're shooting them in the nightclub, you got the dubstep going in the background. That's one of my favorite missions in that game. One thing I must say is that, you know, when you're making a video like this and you're, you know, trying to skip past the cutscene so you can get back to the gameplay, it makes you wait quite a while. It's been saying still loading for like 3 minutes now. Don't get me wrong, the cutscenes are great, but I'm trying to get back to the gameplay, man. There's been talks of a possible like Max Payne 1 and 2 remaster happening soon. I honestly am really excited, but kind of skeptical at the same time. So obviously, as I've been saying, you know, Max Payne 1 and 2, those games are like timeless classics. However, what happens if they try to do a similar remaster to what they did with like the definitive edition and they just outsource it to a third-party company? Realistically, most people would think, hey, you know, they made that mistake once, they wouldn't do it again. But then again, this is AAA gaming and publishers don't really tend to learn from their mistakes nowadays. All I'm saying is that if we get a Max Payne trilogy, the definitive edition, I might freak out just a little bit. Anyway, here we are. We're back into the action. Diving out the window, got the slow-mo going again. Like I said, there's so many different set pieces in this game and I absolutely love it. Most of them just kind of revolve around, you know, Max diving out of a window or Max diving out of something and shooting in slow motion while in his cool bullet time pose. But hey, I mean, it's a Max Payne game, so could you really ask for anything more or different than that? You can also go into slow motion at any time. Like, you don't just have to dive to go into slow motion. You can also just kind of click down the right stick and then it'll put you into bullet time. It's pretty similar to Michael's ability from GTA 5. In fact, it's literally the exact same as Michael's ability from GTA 5. A lot of people say that like the GTA 5 characters' abilities are kind of like derived from other Rockstar properties, which is totally accurate. Like Michael's gets his from Max, and then I'm pretty sure the other comparisons were Franklin's is from Midnight Club and then Trevor's is from Red Dead. I know this is a Max Payne 3 video, so there isn't really any place for like GTA 6 speculation, but I wonder if they're gonna bring that mechanic back. Oh, okay. I'm not even epileptic yet, this room is giving me some problems. Anyways, yeah, for the sake of spoilers, I don't think we're gonna go too much farther in the gameplay department because really anything beyond this is starting to get into like more important spoiler territory. You kind of carry out the shootout through the rest of this building and outside, and then it gets into the rest of the story stuff. So I don't want to spoil it for any of you guys. Again, if you haven't played Max Payne 3 before, obviously, I highly recommend it, just as I would highly recommend going back and playing the original 2 games if you haven't before. But anyways, now we are on to the next part of this show where we go ahead and kind of look at the case, the manual, just get that complete in-box experience. This is my copy of the game that I have had since 2012, so I've had this for 11 years now. I remember how giddy and happy I was when I like picked this game up for the first time. I ripped off the seal and just opened it because I was so excited for this game. You have to understand, I grew up with the Max Payne series, Max Payne 1 and 2 on the PS2. I played those games so much back in the day, it's not even funny. Even when it came out on mobile, like on my iPod Touch, I was playing it there because it was only like $3 on the App Store. Needless to say, this was a very highly anticipated game for me, and it did not disappoint. Anyway, first things first, you look at the cover. Rockstar Games presents Max Payne 3. You got Max there. Obviously, this game is rated M for mature. I noticed I never really showed off like the side profile in these videos before, which is honestly a mistake because, like, you know, when you're setting your games up on your shelf, the main thing you'll be seeing most of the time is the side profile like this. And as you can see here, it's simplistic. It's just the name of the game, but it looks clean. You got the Rockstar logo down there, just like they do in every other Rockstar game. Now we'll go ahead and look at the back here. For Max Payne, the tragedies that took his loved ones years ago are wounds that refuse to heal. No longer a cop, close to washed up and addicted to painkillers, Max takes a job in Sao Paulo, Brazil, protecting the family of wealthy real estate mogul Rodrigo Branco in an effort to finally escape his troubled past. But as events spiral out of his control, Max Payne finds himself alone on the streets of an unfamiliar city, desperately searching for the truth and fighting for a way out. Then as you can see, there's just some like screenshots of the game. I'll hold it up real close so you guys can get a good look at it. But yeah, Rockstar always nails it when it comes to like their completed box case experiences, when it comes to knowing like what screenshots to put on, what to say to get you hyped up for the game. And as you can see right there, it says Max Payne 3 single player and multiplayer. This was back in that generation of games where, you know, even games that didn't really need a multiplayer mode still kind of got one anyway, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with that because the multiplayer in this game was actually a lot of fun. I highly recommend looking up some videos of the multiplayer just so you can see like how it plays and how it works because it's kind of hard to explain. In fact, if I'm gonna be honest, I don't really even know how the technology for the multiplayer even worked because there's bullet time in the the multiplayer, which you would think would slow it down for everyone else, but it did. There was some advanced stuff going on there. Like I said, it's definitely worth just like looking up some videos of the multiplayer just so you can kind of get a feel and a vibe for how it played and how it worked. Oh, and then you got all the ratings down here, and we're gonna start a new segment of the show only for Rockstar games specifically, and that is where we're gonna go ahead and read everything that this game is rated mature for, because Rockstar, I swear to God, their games have so much stuff in them that they end up inventing new things for this rating. So in this game in particular, we have blood and gore, intense violence, partial nudity, strong language, strong sexual content, use of drugs, and alcohol. In most games, you know, you only have like one or two things there, like, blood and gore, intense violence, maybe some language, but no, Rockstar, it's literally like everything under the sun, and this is just scratching the surface. If we take a look at like GTA 5, for example, that thing, dude, you can barely even read it with how much stuff is down there. One neat difference between the Xbox 360 and the PS3, well, I guess I can't really call it a neat difference, it's just, you know, one has 2 discs and one doesn't, but yeah, as you can see here, it's kind of weird how it works. You would think that they just have like single player on one disc and multiplayer on the other, but no, instead they opted to have the first half of the single player and the multiplayer on this disc, and then just the second half of the multiplayer on this disc. It was a bit of an interesting setup, to say the least. I would have much preferred they just had the single player on one disc and the multiplayer on the other, because I'll admit, every time I get to that chapter where I have to switch out the discs, I'm like, oh, I don't want to get up. And plus, I don't know, there's something about having to get up to switch the disc, it takes you out of the game for a second, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you kind of lose immersion, then after you switch discs, you have to sit back down, get re-immersed into the game, and obviously, that's nothing new for me. I mean, I've been playing, for example, something like The Legend of Dragoon or Final Fantasy VII since the PS1 era, where switching discs was a pretty common occurrence since there was like 4 of them. So needless to say, it's just something that I've kind of grown accustomed to over time. However, by the Xbox 360 and the PS3 generation, well, especially towards the latter half of it was getting to that point with the Xbox 360 where it's like, okay, man, you know, we're in the 2010s now. You got games releasing with like 3 or 4 discs. Like, what's going, like Wolfenstein: The New Order, for example. I believe that game came out on like 4 discs. I know that game was cross-gen technically, but still, at that point, I much rather would have them take like the GTA 5 approach, where one disc is an install disc and then the other one plays the game, and that's that. Anyway, that's a tangent for another time. As you can see here, we have this little slip thing. No, there's not any codes on it, so I can show that. And then right here, we got the manual, and thankfully, this isn't like a Platinum Hits version or like a Greatest Hits copy or anything like that, because as we discussed in the previous Who Remembers, Greatest Hits and Platinum Hits versions of games tend to have black and white manuals just because those editions of the game tend to be a bit cheaper to produce. However, like I said, I got this back when it initially launched in 2012, so, you know, I have the original manual, the original case and all that. As you can see, you know, it's all in color, it's all here, man. I really miss video game manuals. I wish that they could make a comeback. They were truthfully part of the experience. Anyways, yeah, that's Max Payne 3. Now I definitely want to hear from you guys down below. Have you guys played this game before? Do you love this game as much as I do? Is this a game that's on your backlog that you have to play yet? Have you played the original 2 Max Payne games? Whatever it is and whatever you're thinking, I definitely love to hear from you guys. But anyway, as always, a shout out to the patrons and channel members, Carmen's Fake Grandma, Liberty Tab, Eggs, Animati, Chulupa, Source, Rex, Ray, Zach, Polar, Ray, De Webster, Lamas, Bianca's, Picatory, Jupison, Melasking, Kuno, Imagine, Mason, Irving, Chua, 15, Flemison, 1, Aaron Reynolds, Unknown, and Christopher Herrera. Thank you guys for watching. Have an amazing day. Stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.